So let's get into your relationship with the people that you lead. And let me remind you who we're talking about. We're talking about your circle of influence that you wrote into those blanks at the top of that first little exercise, that first little page. We're talking about your relationship with those very people. And how does that work, and how does that give you, therefore, permission to lead? Now, let me see. Good. We're going to do another little small group exercise, but in order to do this, I'm going to need to divide you up into cultures. I'm going to need to give you, each of your tables a particular culture, because here's the thing. If you consider in our culture, in the American culture, and by the way, I have found this to be remarkably true in lots of other cultures where I work as well. If we were to look at the leadership culture in America, if you were to go into a bookstore and look for a book on leadership, the chances are 99.9% it will have been written by someone from one of these four cultures. There is military culture of leadership. There is corporate America culture of leadership. There is sports culture. And there is the church. Almost all of the books in our culture on leadership, and there are thousands and thousands of them, almost all of them come from one of these four cultures. And so the exercise that we're going to do next is I'm going to give your table, I'm going to assign your table one of these cultures. Okay? Fair enough? And then I'm going to give you some questions that I want you to answer in order to examine what's different about the church. And that's really what we're doing. So now I've got to look around and see. Now, okay, you guys are just two people at this table. Why don't y'all join this table? I don't want there to be just two people at a table. So if you don't mind, if you've got two people at your table, if you don't mind joining another table, that'll be helpful to us, because you know, two people, that's not enough brain power. That just... Even if you are a DTS grad, you know. So, all right, so I'm gonna assume you two guys are here, and now I need to look at this table. Yeah, I'm gonna... This looks like a spiritual group. I'm gonna give them the church culture. Yeah. You guys get the church culture. This group right here, it will be military. Did I get that right? No, probably not. But y'all be military. You three here, why don't you guys do corporate America? Okay, this is church. I'm sorry, y'all are church. I can see that. Y'all are going to be church. But this table here is sports. Clearly. Oh, y'all are too. This is sports too. You two tables are both clearly sports. Military, corporate America. Right back here, military, I think. I'm going to give you all military right back here. I'm going to put you at one of these other tables, and I'm going to give this. This is going to be corporate America. I want you guys to be corporate America. Church. Okay, you guys will be church. Have I given you guys an assignment yet? Yeah. Okay. Somebody flex their muscles for me here. Let me just see. Yeah, y'all are sports. Y'all are definitely sports. I can see that. Church, corporate America, military. I know I got that wrong, but I'm going to say military. I want you guys to do military too, if you don't mind. Have I given you guys an assignment? Okay. Church, you guys do church. Why don't y'all do corporate America? I need another sports. Will y'all do sports? And you guys do church. Does everybody have an assignment? Did I miss a table? All right. Now, let me give you your questions. You don't even know what you're discussing yet. Here's your questions. Here's what I want you to discuss around your tables. This is going to be an interesting exercise. Here are your 4 cultures: military, corporate America, athletic culture or sports, and the church. I want you to answer 2 questions from within your culture. Okay? In your culture that I've given you, I want you to answer 2 questions. The first question, in your culture, what motivates the follower to follow a specific leader? What motivates the follower to follow a specific leader? And let me give you, y'all are a smart group, so I'm going to give you an advanced question on this. I want you to go on further on that question and even discuss the lowest common denominator, even the worst of leaders in your culture. What motivates the follower to follow even the worst of leaders in your culture? There are things that will motivate the follower to follow the leader in your culture, even the worst ones. Okay? That's your advanced level version of this same question. What motivates the follower to follow a leader? And then the second question I'm going to ask you to address from within your culture is, in your culture, to whom is the leader accountable? In your culture, to whom is the leader accountable? You got it? Ready? Go. I sure hope you guys got this right. We're about to find out. I hope y'all got the right answers to these questions. You got them right? Okay, good. First of all, let me answer a couple of questions that came up during the break that I forgot to answer right up front. What in the world is this? And do I have anything in Spanish? Those were the 2 most prominent questions that I got. First of all, this is the small group Bible study material that I wrote on unity that is kind of at the core of what our ministry does. It's all around an educational process of helping to educate our people about what unity and what God-honoring relationships with one another look like. And that's what this material is. It's a Bible study. It takes about 6 weeks to go through it. I highly recommend it to you and your church. I have pastors who use this even in everything from marriage counseling of all things to Sunday school curriculum. I mean, it's been very helpful to a lot of churches around the world. It's been published in 4 different languages, one of which is Spanish. And so for those of you who speak Spanish and who would have asked, do we have this in Spanish? Yes. We've got 5 Principios de Unidad in Spanish for you. And so all you have to do is contact me, and I will make sure we can get copies to you. The other thing that I forgot to mention to you is that on your table there is an email sign-up sheet. That's not a marketing device so much. I mean, I'm not going to use those email addresses to drown you and drench you in emails, I promise. And I'm not going to be sending spam email to you or anything like that. The only thing we use those for is there is a follow-up email survey that is done by my ministry, just so that we can get better at doing these kinds of conferences and better at doing what we're doing. So if you give me your email address, and by the way, I think that's the least you can give me, is just your email address in exchange for giving you this book. I would love to have your email address so that we can send you that survey, so that you can help me know how to do this better. And so that's really the only thing we will use that for, but I would welcome having that. I've put also my contact information. I am the most available guy on the planet. It's so easy to find me in about 1,000 different ways. Here are a few of them here. And so if you have follow-up questions, if there's any way I can help you or your church, if you want to have a conference or some kind of an event at your church, I'm happy to come there. Those are the ways you get in touch with me. All right, enough of that. Let's get back now to the question at hand. In your culture that I gave you, what motivates the follower to follow a specific leader? Let's start with those of you who had the military culture. Let's start with those of you. Raise your hand if your table had military culture. All right, good. Wow, I didn't do this on purpose, but I kind of made them in line except for one table over there. Those of you who have military culture, in your culture, just say it out loud. Give me some things that motivate a follower to follow a specific leader in your culture. Fear? That's a good one. That's a big one. That's a huge one. Courage. Keep going. Pride. Court martial goes in the category of fear. Promotion, respect of authority. What else? Yes, sir. The what? The oath. Good. Commitment. Oath. Patriotism. Rank. Job security. That goes under the category of fear too. Yes, sir. A leader who wins your respect with... Oh, you follow. Okay. Okay. Good. All good answers. All good answers. What I want you to notice about this culture, and you're going to notice this about a lot of cultures, what I want you to notice about the military culture is that because of this one right here, fear, this kind of gets to the heart of even the bad leaders get followed. Because in the military, there is a built-in fellowship culture. There are consequences if you don't follow the leader in the military. There are consequences. And so fear becomes a huge motivator even in the worst of circumstances. All right? And that's important I want you to notice that about the military culture. Okay, we're going to come back to the military in just a second, but let's move to corporate America. Raise your hand if you were corporate America. Let me see where my corporate America... Okay, very good. In corporate America, and this is my world. I know this world, so I'll really be able to know whether you guys get this right or not, okay? In corporate America, what motivates the follower to follow a specific leader? Money? I'm sorry, what was it? Honesty? Success? A proven track record? Keep going.
What's in it for me?
What's in it for me? I'm going to put that in the category of money. Keep going. What else? God-fearing. Keep going. What motivates the follower to follow? Job security. I'll put that in the category of fear, of money. Actually, I'm going to put fear, if y'all don't mind. I'm going to put that up here and put that all these under that same category. Job security. Loyalty. Okay, cares about you as an individual. What? Board of directors. Okay. Willingness to take risks. What ability? Profitability. Good. That goes back to money. All right. All of these are good. All of these are good. Now, here's what I want you to notice about corporate. Oh, by the way, there's one other one that isn't really up here, but in addition to money, power. In other words, in corporate America, moving up the ladder is what's motivational. It's all about how many people are below me on the letterhead. It's all about getting the bigger office with more windows. It's all about power and influence and money. Money, power, and influence are the things that are kind of dangled in front of you in corporate America to motivate you. Come on, keep growing, keep going, keep going. But what I want you to see also, that in corporate America, in that culture, fear is still a huge motivator, even for bad leaders. And here's the point. In corporate America, many times employees will follow even a bad leader out of fear of the consequences, fear of what happens. Because let's face it, we do grow accustomed to that paycheck, don't we? We kind of get used to getting that paycheck. And the prospects of no longer getting that paycheck will oftentimes motivate us to follow our boss, our employee, our manager, our supervisor, even when we'd rather not, because we like having that job. So fear is a big factor. So what I want you to see in this culture, in corporate America, is there is in this culture as well a built-in followship in the cultural fabric itself. Consequences if you don't follow. Consequences if you refuse to follow. So it's built into that culture. Let's talk about the athletic world. Where are my sports tables, my athletic? Oh, come on, get your hands up. Don't be afraid. All right, sports, athletics. This is tricky because there are so many different possible cultures within athletics. You could be looking at Little League, or you could be looking at school sports, or you could be looking at professional sports. And so it's a little bit tricky. I don't know which ones you chose. But in the athletic world, what motivates the follower to follow a specific leader, a player to do what the coach says? What motivates them? Winning. Good. Keep going. Fear is huge. Money in the professional world. What else?
Chance to play.
Chance to play. Opportunities to play. Glory. Scholarships, which goes back to money.
Future possibilities.
Okay, future possibilities. Prestige. Loyalty. What? Oh, team, yes. Yeah, team, absolutely. Good. These are all good. These are all perfect.
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure, good. All right. Now, here's the thing. And by the way, this is a world I'm a little bit familiar with, at least through high school I was, because I played a lot of sports in school. And fear is huge. Let's just face it. Fear is huge. It's a huge motivator in sports. The prospect of having to run laps or to drop and do push-ups or whatever is plenty of motivation for athletes. Now, in the professional realm, it's a different kind of fear. It's fear of having your paycheck docked. It's fear of Jonathan Vilma not being able to play for a season and losing lots and lots and lots and lots of money as a result of that. So there's a motivator. There's always a motivator of fear in this culture as well. I was a basketball player, and in my 7th grade year at Garner Middle School, John Nance Garner Middle School in San Antonio, Texas, my 7th grade year, we had the worst basketball team in our entire district. We won one game out of about 30 my entire 7th grade year. And our coaches, who we also had for our 8th grade year, our coaches made us run horses. Do y'all know what running horses is? I got to show you this. I'm not going to actually demonstrate it, but I'll draw a picture for you. We had to run a horse. We had to run a horse on our 7th grade basketball team. We had to run a horse for every point we would lose a game by. And we were losing games by 30 and 40 points. And a horse, here's what a horse looks like. If you can imagine, this is the basketball court. Full size. They're just as big. They were just as big in middle school as they were in the pros, for us anyway. So here's your basketball court. The whole team would line up here on the end of the baseline, and you'd run to the free throw line and back, and then to the midcourt line and back, and then to the opposite free throw line and back, and then to the other baseline, to that free throw line and back, to the midcourt line and back, to the other free throw line and back, and then where you started, and that is a horse. And we would run a horse in 7th grade for every point we lost a game by. That meant 45 minutes to an hour of running horses oftentimes after games, not the day following a game. In 7th grade, we won one game, lost about 30. In 8th grade, we never lost a game. Number one, we were the most conditioned guys on the floor. But number two, we were scared to death to lose. And that was a huge motivator, and it made us a better team. Fear is huge in sports, because in sports there is a built-in fellowship. I want you to see that about this culture. In the sports world, there is a built-in fellowship. You don't follow, you don't play. Or you run horses, or you run laps, or you do something else. So you have this built-in fellowship into the fabric of each of these leadership cultures. But here's what I want you to see. Church people, raise your hand. Where are my church tables? All right, listen to this. In the church, what motivates a follower to follow a specific leader? Trust, charisma, Christ, respect, somebody said you give what they want to hear. And somebody said identify with the people. Relationships. Fear. I wrote it down. We'll talk about that. What else? Integrity. Anything else? Love. Faith. All right, we got faith, we got love. We might as well put hope up here, right? Bunch of preachers. I'll tell you what. All right, here's what I want you to notice. I didn't circle fear on this list because to the extent that is there, it's awfully small. Now, maybe if you're a pastor, I know what you're thinking. You're sitting there thinking, well, it ought to be big. They ought to fear God. Their fear of God ought to make them do what I tell them to do. I know you're thinking that. You're just ashamed to actually say it out loud. Some of you. Fear of man.
It's not so much church culture as unhealthy church culture.
That's right. Yeah, fear, to the extent people are motivated by fear in the church, that's not really a healthy culture. And so what I want you to identify, what I want you to see here is, in the church, it's different. People follow leaders in the church for very different reasons. Now, stay with me because I want you to know, I know that there are good, godly leaders in all these other cultures. Athletes who followed Tom Landry. Employees who followed Lee Iacocca. Soldiers who followed Colin Powell. Those are good, godly men, and people followed them not because they had to, although that was there too. They followed them because they wanted to. But here's what I want you to see. In these cultures, for every Lee Iacocca, there's a CEO of Enron who's just as successful. And for every Tom Landry, there's a Woody Hayes who's just as successful. Right? And so down here. For every Colin Powell, there's a George Patton who's just as successful. Why? Because those cultures have fellowship built in. Is it better to have a leader who has good, godly integrity, honesty, truthfulness, respectful characteristics? Sure. But it's not required for success in those cultures. And what I want you to see is, in the church, it's pretty much required for successful leadership in the church. In the church, people aren't following you because of the title you hold. In the church, people are following you for one reason and only one reason. Because there's something about you that makes them want to follow you. And what I want you to hear is, when they stop wanting to follow you, you're no longer leading. You may think you are, but you're not. These other kinds of factors people try in the church, and here's the problem. See, what I'm telling you is, your churches are filled with people who come from these cultures. And so since they come from these cultures, these are the cultural values that they're bringing to the table, expecting of your leadership. The problem with that is these cultures aren't the same as the church culture. In the church, the only way you're a leader is if there are people who want to follow you. And the people who want to follow you, you're a leader. The people who don't want to follow you, you're not their leader. Now, for a pastor, that's a big deal. Because you don't get to choose, you don't get to pick and choose who you're going to pastor, do you? You don't. Everyone say it with me. No, we don't. Yeah, thank you. No, we don't. You don't. You have the responsibility of pastoring everybody that's there. And what that means is you have the responsibility of gaining the permission to lead from everybody who's there. Now that doesn't, please hear me, I'm not saying that you therefore have to twist yourself and contort yourself into being someone that you're not. I'm not saying that you have to bend over backwards and do things that you know are wrong in order to gain their approval. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying that when they stop trusting you, you're no longer their pastor. It really is that simple. It really is that simple. Pastors don't have the privilege, and by the way, leaders in the church don't have the privilege of writing somebody off who they have the responsibility of leading and saying, I don't care what that person thinks about me. You don't have that privilege. If you have a responsibility to lead a person, if there's someone if you're a Sunday school teacher and there's someone in your Sunday school class, you don't have the privilege, the luxury of saying, I don't care what she thinks about me. You don't have that privilege. You have to care what they think about you. That's how Jesus was. Now listen, stay with me. That's how Jesus was. Jesus didn't lose much sleep over what the Pharisees thought about him. I get that. But do you think Jesus cared about what his followers thought about him? I do. I think that's why midway through his ministry in Matthew 16, he stopped the whole thing. He stopped the whole thing after he'd sent them out, let them kind of try on the mantle of leadership themselves for a little while. Y'all go out and you preach the word and you cast out demons and you perform miracles out in the highways and byways. And then he brought them back in, and he brought them back in to report. And he said, all right, let's debrief. Let's take a time out in our ministry. Let me just ask you guys a couple of debriefing questions, right? That's what he did. And he asked them, this is in Matthew 16, he says, who do people out there say that I am? They had a lot of answers to that question, but that wasn't the question that he was aiming at, was it? That wasn't the question that he was really moving towards. The question he asked him that meant everything to him was, what about you? Who do you say I am? That was important to Jesus. That was important to Jesus. Now, let's go to the second question, because this second question's going to become important as well. In the military culture, they had this the easiest. This is the easiest question of the day of any table. In the military culture, to whom is the leader accountable? Chain of command. It's really, really easy. In the military, it's all written down on paper. It's very, very simple. If the person who's just telling you what to do has more stripes on his or her sleeve than you got on yours, then the answer is what? Yes, sir. It's real simple. And so accountability in the military world, it all runs uphill. It all runs up the chain of command, all the way up to the commander-in-chief. And even on paper anyway, even the commander-in-chief is accountable to the people, at least on paper. It's supposed to work that way. It's been a long time since it's worked that way, but it's supposed to work that way. And so the accountability is all running upstream in the military culture. It's really, really simple. What about in corporate America? To whom is the leader accountable? Yeah, but board of directors and then stockholders. Board of directors and then ultimately stockholders. Actually, ultimately even the consumers, ultimately. You'd like to think anyway. Again, in corporate America, the accountability all runs in one direction. This person's accountable to her boss is accountable to his boss is accountable to her boss, et cetera, all the way up to the board of directors, all the way up to the stockholders. It keeps running up. What about in the sports world? To whom is the leader accountable? Owners, athletic directors. In Little League, it's the parents. The most dysfunctional relationships known to man. Little League parents. But at any rate, again, you see in the sports world, whether it's in school sports or Little League or in the professional realm, it all runs up in one direction. The accountability it's very, very clear. It all runs in one direction. What I want you to see is, what about the church? In the church, to whom is the leader accountable? God. Okay, I knew I was going to get that Sunday school answer. Yes, the leader is accountable to God. That is a true answer. But my follow-up question is, and in whom does God reside? The people. The church. Now see, this is what's interesting. This is what's different. This sets the church apart from these other cultures. In the church, the leader is accountable to the very people he or she has been called to lead. More specifically, to God in those people. Accountable to the very people he or she has been called to lead. Now, that's different, you guys. That's different from these other cultures. Again, it doesn't always have to be different. For every bad leader in these other cultures who didn't feel accountable to the people they were leading, there are good leaders in these other cultures who did feel that accountability, but they don't have to. In the church, you got no choice. You are accountable to God living in the very people you have been called to lead. The shepherd is accountable to the sheep. These other cultures don't have any concept of that in them. For the corporate America, for the corporate world, that would be tantamount to the CEO having to be voted on by the employees of a corporation year after year. And that is unheard of. In the sports world, that would be tantamount to the high school football coach being voted on to keep his job by the players themselves. Now, all the high school coaches are really, really happy that's not the truth. That's not the way it works. And in the military world, that would be very, very much like every general being voted on into his next rank by the people who he leads. That ain't the way it works. But in the church, that's exactly how it works. You lead in the church, you lead only because you've been granted permission to lead by people who trust you. And they can pull that permission at any time. And so your leadership credibility in the church is all about your characteristics and your relationships with the people you've been called to lead. Here we go. Let's fill in some blanks. One characteristic of church leadership that sets it apart from most other leadership is that it can only be effective within the context of personal relationships. It can only be effective within the context of personal relationships, or at least perceived personal relationships. I say, or at least perceived personal relationships, because here's the reality. Most of the studies that I've seen on relational leading and on leadership, most of the studies would say that you can really only have mentoring, pastoring, nurturing relationships with about 100 people at the most. Most studies actually make it a lower number than that. But you can really nurture and pour yourself into and pastor and shepherd about 100 people. And so what does that mean for the church that has 400 members as a pastor? Or what does that mean for the church that's got 4,000 members like mine for the pastor? How does that effectively work?
More than one pastor.
Yeah, you've got to have more than one leader pouring into people. You've got to depend heavily on smaller groups. Most of the church growth, I hate to use that word because there's a lot of baggage that goes with that movement. I'm not talking about the church growth movement, but most people who understand growing churches have come to understand that the secret to going large is going small. In other words, the secret to growing is not how many people can we jam into our sanctuary. It's how many people can we get into small groups during the week, having people pour into their lives. That's the secret. There's a limit to how much you can really do. I heard John Maxwell speaking at a conference. This was back many years ago, shortly after he had left Skyline Church. He was the pastor at Skyline Church in San Diego. At the time he left Skyline, they had about 10,000 members. They were running several worship services, I think 8 or 9 worship services throughout the course of a Sunday. And I remember him addressing this question of how do you pastor 10 or 11,000 people? And he said, a lot of it, I mean, you don't. Number one, you don't. You really only are able to pour yourself into a limited number of people, and you raise up leaders around you, and he was big on that. But one of the things he said is you also do little things that help your people know that you do love them. You may not know them well, but you do care about them and you love them, and you do little things. For example, John Maxwell, and maybe you may think these are parlor tricks or that these are shallow. I don't think so. I think these are just things that you do to help people know that your heart is in the right place. They would usually, at Skyline Church, they had a lot of people, they had a lot of turnover in that church, just like any church does, except that when you have 10 or 11,000, the turnover is a lot bigger. So you may have 30 people who join on a Sunday, but you have 20 people who moved out of San Diego at the same time. 30 people or so joining the church every week. Can you imagine that? And so how do you as pastor, how do you welcome those people? What he would do was he had a person who was in charge of taking a Polaroid picture of every single person who would join the church every Sunday morning. And then on Sunday night, at the end of the night, that person would take that stack of Polaroid pictures, write the person's name on the bottom of each picture, punch a hole through them, and hand them to John on a big key ring. And John would take that key ring with him all week long, and he would memorize names and faces for one reason only, so that on the following Sunday he would make an extra effort to find those 30 people throughout the course of those 8 services, locate those 30 people, go to them, shake their hand, introduce himself. They may not have even met him yet, and tell him, Blake, so glad you came back this week. How's Elizabeth and Anne-Marie, your kids? Now, that may sound shallow and like a parlor trick, but listen, that's just an effort that you go to in order to let your people know your heart, where your heart is. You want to love them. There's no realistic way you can love that many people, but you want to. And so you take the time to do something like that. You take the time, take 10 minutes out of each of your day. The 10 minutes right before lunch, you take the time to write a handwritten thank you note to somebody in your congregation. Now, how hard would that be? Just taking 10 minutes out of your day, every day, to write a handwritten thank you note. Go and get yourself a whole bunch of thank you notes and just write, hey, loved that special you sang on Sunday. Thank you for your service. Signed, Blake. Little things like that, those are the things that we do in order to show our people that they matter to us. Now, bringing it down to a smaller level, for those of you who are lay leaders in the church, and maybe you don't have 400 people that you have to shepherd and mentor, but maybe you've got a Sunday school class. You know, maybe you've got a committee that it's your job to love well in order to lead. The question is, what does that look like? How does that work? And I just want to say that it's all about, unfortunately, it's all about what have you done for me lately, frankly. That's what love, unfortunately, looks like in those relationships. And I tell you what, let me come back to that. Let's keep filling in the blanks. I want to do one more exercise with you before I run out of time on this segment. How am I doing? Good. I got about 10 minutes. One more exercise with you. Maybe you've heard this before. Maybe you've heard this little saying, people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. Have you ever heard that before? All right. Let's do a little exercise. In your materials, I think you've got a question there that says, what are my gifts, strengths, and talents? Do you have that there in your materials? Okay, I want you to write a few things down. I want you to write down, and this is just for you. I'm not going to ask you to share this around your table. This is just for you. I want you to write down, what are some things that you do well that makes you a good leader? Why is it that you are in the leadership position you're in right now? What are some things you do well? Are you a good communicator? Are you a good teacher? Are you an encourager? Are you a good administrator? Are you organized? Do you have a knack for organization, structure? Just write down some things you're pretty good at. Gifts, strengths, talents, things you've learned. Write a few things down. Come on, everyone, write a few things down there. I think this is important. All right. Good. Good. This little saying, people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. I've researched that, trying to figure out who said this first. You'd be surprised. You go online and type that in, you'll be surprised at how many people this has been attributed to. There's a whole lot of people who have taken credit for this statement. Looking back in time, the earliest person that I was able to find that used these words to say this was Thomas Watson, who was the founding CEO of IBM Corporation. This was way back, when IBM was making adding machines, a whole different company. Thomas Watson said, people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. But here's what's interesting. Here's what I'd like you to take away from here about this statement. He wasn't the first person to say this. He may be the first person to use those exact words, but he wasn't the first person to say this. You know who the first person to say this was? Okay, he's looking in his Bible, so that narrows it down, right? Turning back to the New Testament. That narrows it down a lot, doesn't it? Now we're talking about just really 3 or 4 people, right? And I'm turning past the Gospels and Acts, so that knocks one person out. I am turning to 1 Corinthians. I want you to hear this and tell me if you think this sounds a lot like people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Listen to this. Find it here. Here we go. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. Okay, that's not it. Listen to this next sentence. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, how much I know, right? How much I know. But have not love, how much I care. I am nothing. Paul said it 2,000 years before Thomas Watson said it. And that's in the Scripture, you guys. So that makes it not just a pretty good truth, but an eternal truth. It makes it an eternal truth. That makes it worth learning and worth figuring out. So here's the exercise. Here's what I want you to think about. It's not just about how much you know. Paul goes on in this passage to talk about all kinds of gifts and abilities. He says, I may have the gift of giving and can give my body over to the flames. He says it's about faith. I may have a faith that can move mountains. He says it's even about spiritual gifts. I may have the gift of tongues and speak it with tongues of men and of angels. Paul would say, I don't care what the ability is, whether it's a spiritual gift or a learned skill, and I don't care where it came from. It could have come from God Himself. Your gift. If you don't have love, it's worthless. In other words, whatever you wrote in those blanks just now that you're good at, whatever you wrote down there, you can put it into this statement. You can drop this out and you can write whatever you're good at. Did you say you're a good communicator? People don't care how well you communicate until they know how much you care. Did you say you're a good administrator? People don't care how organized you are until they know how much you care. Whatever you wrote that you're pretty good at, it fits in this statement according to Paul, according to the Apostle Paul in his letter to the Corinthian church. And so my point, I guess, is this. This is why in my church, when we do our training of our teachers, of our Sunday school teachers and our small group Bible study teachers, here's what we would tell them. We tell them, we hope you'll never have to make this choice. But if you do, if you have to choose in a given week, time-wise, you just don't have time to do both. So you have to choose between either touching your people during the week, calling them, touching them, or preparing a lesson. If you have to choose between the two, our recommendation is touch your people and come Sunday unprepared, if you have to. Because, and here's the thinking behind this, because according to this, you may be the most gifted communicator of God's Word alive on the earth today. You may be better than Andy Stanley. Maybe you are. But if the 9 people sitting in chairs in a circle around you on Sunday morning, if they don't know that you love them, it doesn't matter how good you are. You've got nothing to offer them. You've got nothing to offer them if they don't know that. And so you've got to do the little things it takes to make sure they know you love them. Now here's the problem with that. The problem is our people are people. They're human beings. And with all human beings, it works this same way. We are a what have you done for me lately people. And so it really isn't all that big a deal that you came and visited me in the hospital 16 years ago when I had my surgery. That was good then, but it doesn't really gain you that much favor today. We are a what have you done for me lately people. Let me see if I can do it this way. I've got a few ladies in the crowd, so ladies, y'all tell me if I get this right. I used to think, I'm remarkably unromantic for being a guy who goes around teaching relationships. I am romantically challenged, my wife would tell you. I used to think, honey, I told you when we got married that I love you. If that ever changes, I'll let you know. Ladies, it doesn't work that way, does it? No, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way, and it doesn't work that way with your people either. It doesn't work that way with your people. We need to know now. We need to know today that you love. I need to know today that you love me. It matters. It matters. And so the things that we do to love our people now is what gives us the permission. You want to talk about pastoral authority? Because that question always comes up. I'll tell you about pastoral authority. Pastoral authority comes from, number one, speaking exactly what God has given you to speak, and no more and no less. And when you stray from what God has given you to speak, you no longer have pastoral authority. Okay? It comes from that. And number two, pastoral authority comes because your people give it to you. Because you love them well. And when you love them well, they will give you unbelievable. They'll give you more authority than you're comfortable with having when you love them well. But if there are people sitting in your Sunday school class or in your committee meeting or in your church, and the question that they're asking themselves is he for me or is he against me? If they're having to ask that question, then you don't have authority. You don't have authority. I don't care what your degree says, and I don't care what office you hold in the church. You lack authority if they're having to ask themselves that question, is he for me or is he against me? And so you must protect those relationships, and you must invest in those relationships in order to have the permission to lead in the church. Fill in this last blank with me. Even the strongest gifts and talents of a Christian leader are perceived by the body through personal relationships Personal relationships, which therefore must be a priority to him or to her. Relationships. The harsh reality is, and I cannot even tell you how many, I have worked in hundreds of church conflicts all around the world over the last 20 years, and it's scary to me how many pastors and church leaders are out there with really little clue about how to do relationships. And I get that the job of pastor is multifaceted, and I get that you can't be great at all of them. I get that. There is a teaching element to it. There is an administrative element to it, and there is a pastoral care element to the office of pastor. I understand that. And I also understand, and I teach search committees this all the time. I was just talking to Thane. Where are you, Thane? Yeah, I was just talking to Thane about their church, the pastor search committee. And I teach search committees this all the time. You don't get all three. Don't go looking for all three. We got too many search committees that are out there. Everybody wants a 40-year-old pastor with 35 years of experience, right? Everybody wants a pastor with a big red S on his chest, and they're not out there. And you divide the office of pastor up into teaching and preaching. Then the second one is administrative abilities, and the third one is pastoral care. And you don't get someone who's unbelievable at all three of them. They're just not there. That's way too much to expect. You should decide as a search committee which one of those is crucial in your church. And that's not the same in every church. In my church, teaching and preaching is crucial because my pastor is on live television every Sunday morning to hundreds of thousands of people all over South Texas. That's a big part of who we are as a church. We can't have someone standing in our pulpit who's not a really good communicator. We've got other people on our staff who do pastoral care in unbelievably gifted ways. We've got other people on our staff who do administration in really gifted ways. Our pastor needs to be teacher-preacher. I don't know what it is for your church, but you don't get all three. You get one, maybe two of those things. Good. Really well done. Really well done. But my point is this. No matter which of those three, if you're a pastor, no matter which of those three is kind of your wheelhouse that you're real good at, one thing you can never be bad at, you just can't as pastor, is relationships. And so if you are, then you have some studying and learning to do because relationships is what makes it possible for you to pastor. Relationships are that important in the church. Same thing is true with every church leader, with every person sitting in this room. Your relationships. Do the people you're leading know that you love them because of something you have done for them in their life recently? Do they know it? That's the question. That's the question. Church leaders all the time after conflict, they tell me, I wish we had taken more responsibility for the relationships among our people. We lost sight of how important that is. That's the first most common regret. When I come back in the third segment, I'm done here now. When I come back in the third segment, we're going to take up the other two common regrets. Building consensus. I'm going to share the secret of building consensus, and we're going to do a very cool exercise. And then we'll talk last about focus of your leadership. Thanks. See you guys in a minute.